Now, in 5 days, residents will, in Edo State, will head to the polls to elect a new governor. As the countdown continues, Nigeria's electoral body is in the last stages of preparations. The commission has confirmed it is ready for the polls with the training of its presiding and assisting presiding officers and providing support to ensure effective polling and counting. The electoral body has also tested the bimodal voter accreditation system, that's a BVAS, to be deployed for the polls and is assuring Nigerians of its optimal performance. So joining me now is Afolabi Adekaiyoja, who is a research analyst at the Center for Democracy and Development. Adekaiyoja, it's good to have you on Newsnight. So when you appear, the fearful must. Thanks for having us. So, INEC is saying we're ready, we've crossed the T's and dotted the I's, and we're ready to go come September 21 to, administer this election, to supervise the election. Yeah. What are you seeing so far?
Well, there are many different factors that play a role in the way the elections are being conducted, right? So we look at INEC's performance, which usually tends to be better when it comes to an off-cycle election because all the focus can go to one particular state. So Edo in September, Ondo in November. So we don't expect it to be a case where it goes below par. Where the major challenge now comes into is in the conduct of the different stakeholders in the elections, the political parties, their candidates, and then the different way that they are trying to appeal to the electorate to get their votes. One of the major issues that we're tracking at CDD is actually information disorder. So one of the biggest issues in terms of what are the different trends that people are actively trying to use to weaponize, to attack other candidates and to promote their own candidates. So our program, which is sponsored by the National Democratic Institute, NDI, has really been trying to understand all these different dimensions, issues around identity. For example, how one of the candidates is from a different senatorial zone, is from the same senatorial zone as the current governor, and that sense that it should go to a different senatorial zone for equity. Even the sense of around gender, how the only female candidate for governor has also been unduly attacked online because of her gender, in terms of how that she can be seen as a potential governor. So we're tracking many of these things, also looking at the analysis on the ground in terms of what our observers on the ground are telling us about the sentiments, about fears about insecurity, many groups being concerned about being able to go to the election, actually being able to go peacefully and cast their votes and come back. And this sense that because of how heated the polity is, the sounds that many of these different candidates are almost making it a do or die affair, is that concern about how safe the elections can be, and hoping that when we cross into Sunday and Monday, when the results are hopefully declared, that there's still peace in Edo State.
Absolutely. Now, all of this combined, what does it tell you about not just the electorate, the political players themselves? What does it say? Because some of the points that you've raised, including, of course, the electorate themselves. I mean, you hear a lot of disinformation on, on social media. What does all of this portend? What does it tell you?
Well, we're really concerned about the direction, that a lot of the rhetoric and the campaigns are being used. We issued a statement yesterday on International Day of Democracy, and we're looking at the fact that the trends across the country and across the region at large are actually, regressing. And it comes down to a simple sentiment, which is that many people don't feel the dividends of democracy. They don't understand why they should feel wedded to this particular idea. And that's why when you see, many fellow West Africans in countries that are led by military regimes, you get the sense of, okay, fine, what is different in the way that they are feeling than what you're getting in a democracy? And part of the concern comes to the way some of these different stakeholders actively try to weaponize their particular ways to campaign. We touched on identity, right? It's one of these big things where in an ideal situation, it shouldn't matter where somebody comes from. It should be a case of, the quality and then being able to, engage and appeal to the electorate. But then repeatedly, many candidates are actively using that as a very big tool to say that this is why this person should be the next governor or should be the next deputy governor. And that is really playing into the way that this particular sentiment is growing. What that now means is that you have a much more divided electorate. And this is not the first time. We all tracked what happened in the last general elections and how that also played into the results, and even the way that, quite frankly, we still have a government that is still trying to unite a country that is still frayed and still divided at different points. So the concern ultimately comes down to one big thing. when you take away the insecurity, when you take away the different bits of information disorder and how identity has been weaponized, ultimately, how does a new government maintain the legitimacy and the mandate of the people to actually govern and deliver on what they want to do?
Absolutely. And this, what you call identity factor, is it a reflection of the fact that maybe the players absolutely have nothing to offer, and so they have to resort to, this pedestrian arguments instead of focusing on the real issues as to what Edo people want or need, this time? The
major concern comes down to the fact that, quite frankly, there are very few differences, between many of the different political parties. When you come to the, to the core ideology or to the core policy arguments that have been presented. It was in Edo State where the candidates in 2016 actually just swapped in 2020 for governors. So it's a situation where, ultimately one of the big challenges in the political class has been how do you distinguish yourself and then differentiate. And sadly, identity has been a very convenient way to approach that. What we are hoping that we can try to push, collectively with other different groups, the media, CSOs, is to try to heighten the level of engagement. Make sure that actually what are the different issues that citizens really want to hear about, issues that citizens care about, what are the things about education, about access to electricity, about healthcare. Many of these things are very paramount, and if you engage with citizens, they will tell you what it is that they want to, that actually need their leaders to focus on. If
governance is about the people, the people really should be in the driving seat. Let's touch on this fake news, quickly before we let you go. And then again, very importantly, before I forget, the APC candidate and the PDP candidate, they were no-show at the debate yesterday, organized by BON, NUDG, and of course the Nigerian Union of Journalists, NUJ. What does that tell you? Because if you look back, many who have not showed up at the debates actually end up winning the election.
So that gives
disregard for the people, for the electorate?
I think one of the major challenges really has been how do we bridge the gap between where elected officials are right now and where the electorate is, and then where each group wants to be. So we are trying to make sure that we have a much more politically enlightened electorate. But then at the end of the day, it still comes down to the fact that politicians have been able to identify a way to get elected without engaging on that particular level. No Nigerian president has been elected by taking part in the debate. So it's one of those big trends where obviously the advisors have told them that this is actually not as important as it is. But then there are also questions about the logistics. Is there a case where the reach of the debate's message might not have been as impactful? Is there a sentiment where the messaging in terms of trying to reach particular groups is already too divided? Things are already too set in stone. There are many of these different permutations that play a big role. But ultimately, like you mentioned, it is actually sad that we don't have a culture where candidates feel obliged to actively engage with citizens.
I wonder whether it should be legislated.
That actually is that's a very, very good idea, actually, because ultimately it should be a case where you should actually audition for the job that you're trying to.
Absolutely. If you're going for a job, you go for an interview. Well, I have to say thank you very much for Adekaiyoja, Research Analyst, Center for Democracy and Development, CDD. Thank you very much.